This episode of 33.3 News is brought to you by the Shake and Wake Radio Network. You can find them on shakeandwakeradio.com. All right, welcome back to 33.3 News, everybody. For those of you who are new, my name is Trey Harris. I appreciate you for joining us. If you have stumbled upon this by accident, I must warn you. If you are easily offended, this is not the news show for you, because we do not pull our punches here at 33.3 News. We care about your eternal destination, and therefore we don't believe that we should pull punches, because it is so critical that you understand exactly what is going on in the world. And I want to start it with this. Matthew 24:37 through 40. Many of you guys who have been listening to this for a while know these verses, I'm sure by heart. Matthew 24:37 through 40 says, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. And of course, if you read Matthew chapter 13, the one that is taken, that is the tare, not the wheat, as the dispensationalist movement would have you believe. But rather, notice this. I want to read this. This is Genesis chapter 6, verse 3. And the Lord said, this is the verse that is always overlooked. And in my mind, it is criminally overlooked in Genesis chapter 3. But this is the most important verse. Forget everything else you know about Genesis chapter 3. Yes, the giants are important. The corruption is important. But understand this. If you miss this, you've missed the whole point of Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, verse 3, and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet shall his days be 120 years. But I want to focus on that. My spirit shall not always strive with man. And look, this is something that happened before the flood, and this is what Paul has to say about it. This is Romans 1:18 through 32. A lot to read here, but this is going to go into everything that we're going to talk about tonight. Everything can be summed up because of this, because of these verses. These are the times that we are living in the world, and it's important that we know this. But so we're going to read the Bible, and then we're going to look at the news. We're going to look at the news. We're not going to look at the Bible through the lens of the news. That is a huge mistake that I think a lot of prophecy people make, but rather what we're going to do is we're going to look at the news through the lens of the Bible, and that's why we're going to start with the Bible first. That way we have our biblical view set. We interpret everything through the scriptures and ultimately through the doctrine of Christ. All of you that have been with us for a while, you know this. I'm speaking to the choir. Nevertheless, we have to do the due diligence. So Romans chapter 1, starting in verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them. For God hath shewed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. It reminds me of the Psalm. Only the fool says in his heart, there is no God. So for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. You don't believe in the Godhead? You believe that Jesus can't be God because, well, that's the pagan Trinity, and that's the corruption of the Catholic Church. Guess what? If you do not believe that Jesus Christ is co-equal and co-eternal with the Father, you are without excuse once you get to heaven. if you don't believe that a God created all of this, it's because you want to live in your sinful nature, and there's no excuse for you when you stand before the judgment seat of God. So let's keep going. So, so that they are without excuse, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. That not only just sums up America, but that sums up the world with America at the beginning. America, make no mistake, America, yes, you've got the World Economic Forum and things like that, but when you look at our abortion laws and all of the stuff we have here, America are the ones that are ultimately leading the world into perdition. So when it says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And look, the church is going right along with that. The church just wants to pander so hard to the scientific world. Like, they just bend over backwards, and we're going to get in a little bit into that too, but not in the news, but in the scriptures, scripturally speaking. They want the world to love them. The church wants the world to accept them. Come check us out. We have really cool rock concerts. Come check us out. We got the strobe lights. Come check us out. We're not going to tell you about sin. We're going to give you a motivational speech and talk about how God wants you to be rich. No, look, let's get this straight. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and they changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up to vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind. Their minds literally became useless, worthless, good for nothing, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. I really want to focus on this last verse, because that's going to come up in one of the stories we're going to talk about later on. So we're going to go ahead and look at a couple of these stories. And later on, I've got some other scriptures that we're going to get into. But right now, let's go ahead and get into the first story, because this one's a little local. So just to give you guys, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. It's actually making the rounds on many news sites. I've already seen it. I've got articles just pulled up right here about it on the Daily Wire and the Epoch Times. And this is the town that I literally grew up in, this town. All right, so this article says entire police force in North Carolina town resigns in protest of progressive town manager. Now, like I said, I grew up in this town. The town is Kinley, North Carolina. Just to put it into perspective, Kinley, it's not the smallest town in North Carolina, but it's one of them. It is on a major highway. It does run, US 301 runs right through Kinley, and then Interstate 95 301 and 95 intersect. So there, I mean, it is kind of like a little, it could be a hub, but it's a little nothing town, right in Johnston County. I kid you not, majority of my life, I lived either in or around Kinley. I played T-ball in Kinley. I played T-ball all the way up through Little League baseball in Kinley. So, this was an interesting story. The entire police force, now keep in mind, small town, so not that many people. But this is what it says. The entire police force in a North Carolina town, including the veteran chief, resigned Thursday over a new town manager who calls herself, quote, progressively responsible. Kinley Police Chief Josh Gibson wrote in a Facebook post, he and all five, it's actually four. Four is what I'm seeing the majority of the time. And that's what the talk around here is that it was 4 officers, as well as 2 other town officials quit in protest of Justine Jones. Now, Justine Jones, just to give you a little, Justine Jones was actually brought from like way outside Kinley. That's half the problem right there. I don't know what in the heck these people in Kinley were thinking bringing an outsider, but yeah, they should have known that was going to backfire. So she became, listen, get this, she has only been the town manager since June. And it is now July 22nd as I'm recording this. July 22nd. Hasn't even been there 2 full months. And the entire police force, full-time police force, has resigned. Now, they're claiming it was a hostile work environment, is what Gibson claimed. But there's some other stuff coming out that I haven't been able to verify. I mean, as you saw, there was the progressively responsible thing. There's whispers that there's some woke stuff going on. But, and I'm going to, if I can ever get back down there, this town's like less than an hour from where I live. Matter of fact, it wasn't too long ago, my grandmother and grandfather literally just moved out of this town. This is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to be keeping my eye on this one because this is just weird. But guys, this is how this stuff starts. Taking over the federal level with this woke religion stuff, because that's what this wokeness is. This is for all intent, this is what they want the state religion to be. This is evil stuff. It goes back to, everybody loves to trace it to Karl Marx, but this stuff goes back to the deepest core tenets of the Illuminati is what this is. And they have to start on a local level because the way that our government is set up is it has to be, it's we the people. So you have to start to the closest level of the people, and that is in the local towns. You brainwash them from there, and then you work your way up. They can try to go from the federal down all they want. Ultimately, that will fail. It is through these small towns. That's where you have to pay attention, guys. So important. And I need to do a better job of this myself. We got to get out there, and we've got to either, use your voice to vote in the small level. I mean, we need to do something. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of lawless towns. Now, there's a couple of different sheriffs that are talking about stepping in. Highway Patrol is talking about stepping in to fill the gaps there. But I mean, you're looking at a town that literally has local law enforcement is so important. And it is important that you are protected and serviced by people in your town that that is so critical. You've got to be able to know and trust the people. And I mean, this town, Kinley, I hate to say it like this, but Kinley is growing up there and then coming back years later, because I worked in this town for years. This was like one of my service areas. As a matter of fact, when I ran a pest control route, Kinley was on my route. And there's something off in the air. Now, there's a lot of, there's meth stuff in there. Like, I literally saw a truck smoking one time and joked that the meth lab in the back was about to blow up. Well, an hour later, it did. There's a meth problem. Like I said, two major highway, major interstate right there. There's meth. There's all sorts of drug problems that can be found in Kinley. All the way up through Wilson, which is another 95 town. And then you've got my town, which is another 95 town that is literally the halfway point between New York and Florida. So all of these areas really bad for drugs and things like that. But Kinley is one of those areas that, even though it's only 5 officers, that amount of a shift is going to create such chaos and havoc if they're not careful. And so, but this all goes back to what we were talking about. These are people that profess themselves to be wise, but they're actually fools. I mean, you've got to be pretty freaking foolish to be in as a town manager for not even 2 whole months, and you have caused an entire police department, as small as they may be, to retire. Or to resign, I should say. Think about that. Think about that. And so, guys, this is the kind of stuff, and voting is one thing. You can choose to vote, you can choose not to vote. That's fine. But there is one thing that every follower of Jesus Christ should be doing, and it is praying for these little towns like this. It's the little towns that are going to make the difference. The big cities are one of those things that, well, they're always full of rot and corruption, and it's been that way since biblical times. But these little towns are what can make the difference. I mean, look at, whether you agree with Presbyterianism and things like that, look at the town of Moscow, Idaho, and how there were a couple of pastors up there who had a vision of winning that town over for the gospel. And they have, basically they've done it. That is a town that, the lay people of Christ Church, they're winning that town over. And it's incredible to see now. Of course, you guys know, anybody who's followed me long enough knows that I have significant problems with Presbyterianism and Calvinism, mainly that I don't think they went far enough in their Reformation, in the original Reformation. But I love that mentality of wanting to win an entire town over to Christ Jesus. And I think more and more of us need to do that, and we need to pray intentionally. Because make no mistake, if we don't do it, and at least if we don't try, Satan will. And he's doing it with areas like Kinley. Like I said, and it's not just me. I've asked my wife when we've gone through there, like, is it just me or is there something off about this town? You can feel it in the air. At least I can, and she can. There's something off in the air in Kinley, and it's finally making itself manifest by wreaking havoc on the government there, because that's what Satan wants. Satan is the epitome of lawlessness, and he's going to want lawlessness to thrive. And the only way we can do that is through what the psalmist said, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is truth. We have to have law. Everybody talks about law and order, but make no mistake, the law and the order you need the law of God, but you also need God's order. And we're going to talk about a little bit of both of those tonight. So, but I wanted to share this story first because this was the story. Like I said, this was a town I grew up in. I lived there. So basically the way it works is there's a town right outside of Kinley called Middlesex. I had a Middlesex address, but you could walk out into the road, and all of a sudden it's a Kinley address. Like, that's kind of how close they are. And so I've literally lived around this area almost my whole life, with the exception of a few years I lived, a couple of towns over. But from like, there was a stint from when I was like 3 to, I think, 8 years old, we lived in Kinley. And then we moved over a couple of towns to a town called Clayton. And then we moved back to the Middlesex, Kinley area from the time that I was 14 until I graduated high school. I stayed with my parents for a couple more years. I moved out when I was 21, when I started for the sheriff's office that was in the neighboring county, Wilson County. And then I moved to Wilson County because you had to live in the county that you worked in so you could vote for the sheriff that employed you. Really shady stuff there. But, I literally lived around this area my whole life. And it's really sad to see this kind of stuff happening. And so I'm going to be praying hard for this town. I hope you guys will too. So that was the Daily Wire. The Epoch Times says, entire North Carolina town's police department resigns after new manager is hired. And, it goes on. He says, this was in the statement from the police chief. I have put in my 2 weeks notice, along with the whole police department. Or no, that was Sharon Evans who said that, excuse me. Sharon Evans and Christy Thomas with the whole town of Kinley after 21 years of service. Gibson wrote on Facebook on July 20th, the new manager has created an environment I do not feel we can perform our duties and services to the community. In my 21 years at the Kinley Police Department, we have seen ups and downs, but especially in the last 3 years, we've made substantial progress that we had hoped to continue. However, due to the hostile work environment now present in the town of Kinley, I do not believe progress is possible, Gibson wrote in his letter. So Gibson told WCNC-TV that he can't go into more detail, and said that lawyers are involved. The department, he said, is supposed to have 8 full-time officers, but has only had 5. And guys, I'm telling you, like I said, that was Johnston County. Right beside Johnston County is Wilson County, which is actually one of the articles I read. It was a local news station had actually reached out to the Wilson County sheriff's office where I used to work out, and they're not receiving comment. But I believe what they had wanted to know was they're looking for places like Wilson County and Johnston County, like the sheriff's offices, to step in and kind of cover this area. Johnston, in the local article I had read, said they didn't have any plans for that yet. But I think it was the Daily Wire article said, which was written a little bit later, said that there were plans for Johnston and the highway patrol to step in. But I can tell you from experience at least with Wilson County, when I worked for them, they were painfully understaffed. And I am still in contact with deputies and various other people that are at that department that said it is only getting worse. It is just, the whole department is full of nonsense. And, you're going to keep seeing things like this. They're going to happen. So, let's pray for these little towns. Kinley is a very impoverished area. Like I said, it was part of my pest control route. A lot of low-income families in that area. So be in prayer, because those low-income areas tend to be a magnet for lawlessness as it is. All right, so now switching to a more federal level, I'm sure many of you have already heard now that double vaxxed and double boosted Joe Biden has caught COVID. which I'm trying to get a new thing caught on. Trying to get a new thing to catch on where we, everybody calls him like Sleepy Joe and things like that. I think we should call him Corona Joe. Because he was the one, hey, you need to get the vaccine. You're not going to get sick. Matter of fact, I got it right here. Let me play it for you.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Yeah.
Really? And this is another thing he said. This was this year in January.
So there's no excuse. No excuse for anyone being unvaccinated. This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So we got to make more progress.
Ouch. That didn't age well, did it? That did not age well at all. This is what it says. Quote, this morning, President Biden tested positive for COVID-19. He is fully vaccinated and twice boosted and experiencing very mild symptoms, said a statement by White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Ugh, goodness gracious. Just saying that woman's name makes my blood pressure go up. Biden has begun taking Paxlovid, which is the that Pfizer pill for COVID, I guess, and will work in isolation until he tests negative. Yeah, so I wanted to find the clip. I haven't been able to find it yet, but if you've looked at his statement, one of the things he says is keep the faith. Right? After talking about how he's double vaccinated, double boosted, he said the symptoms are mild, keep the faith. What faith is he talking about? This same faith we've been talking about, this woke religion and their God. In Pfizer we trust. This is what they care about. These guys, they worship these sorcerers. Now, and of course, the naysayers are going to be, what are you talking about, sorcerers? They're literally a company of scientists who just make medicine. Well, for those of you who may not know, the word sorcery in the New Testament comes from the Greek word pharmakia, which is where we get our word pharmaceuticals, pharmacy, things like that, where we get big pharma, big sorcery. I mean, my goodness, guys, it's right there. These people, I don't know what it is, but this is a religion. Like it feels like we're dealing with the Janus and Jambres. There, it took me a minute to get it, but we're dealing with bozos and sorcerers who think that they can. They want to do the same thing that Janus and Jambres did. They want to be able to contend with the Most High. And quite frankly, God is making a mockery of them. And while I don't wish any ill will on the president or anybody else, it is quite entertaining to watch God make a mockery of the people that hate him. And I will not apologize for that whatsoever. So, and then this is really weird. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have heard it, but a lot of one of the things that people are talking about is, everybody's like, oh, well, Joe Biden's gotten sick, and, they're briefing Kamala Harris on, being the president, and people are taking that and running with it like, come on, I've got inside sources saying Kamala Harris is going to be the next president of the United States. Actually, given his age, it would actually be perfectly reasonable if they were going to debrief her, just in the off chance that he does take a turn for the worse and does something were to happen to him, God forbid. That would make sense, but there's no reason to, run wild and start speculating and people having inside sources and things like that. Like, that's, to me, that would seem like a normal and rational reaction, is to go ahead and take your second in command and bump it up to speed. Because, my gosh, Kamala Harris is going to need all the help she can get. The ineptitude of this woman. She makes Joe Biden look like he is functioning at 100%. She is so dumb. She can't even string a coherent sentence together. Just, oh my gosh, watching the word salad. By the way, there's something where you can make money. You have all you can eat buffets and salad bars. There's an all you can eat word salad bar run by Kamala Harris. My gosh. Just word salad after word salad statement, and they make no sense. But this is the one that I found really interesting. So this is Hillary posts campaign photo minutes after Biden's COVID diagnosis. His eyebrows were raised Thursday after Hillary Clinton posted an old campaign photo and captioned it, "On the move," shortly following the announcement that quadruple vax Biden has COVID. The photo shows Hillary in 1992 standing in front of the Clinton-Gore campaign plane. The move prompted many to ask the question, is Clinton preparing to run again? Spencer Brown put on Twitter, "Fun timing on this one," and then quote tweeted Hillary Clinton on the move 1992. And there's several more that are like that, but this is, I found that odd. It says, as we highlighted earlier this week, a former top advisor to Bill Clinton claims that Joe Biden will be forced to step aside and be replaced by Hillary, who is preparing to run again for president in 2024. Don't know how he would be replaced by Hillary. She's not even in the line of succession. Unless they mean, like, have him step aside and not run in 2024. If that's what they mean, that makes sense. But that wording there didn't quite make sense for me. So it says the prediction was made by Dick Morris, who ran Bill Clinton's successful re-election campaign in 1996 and was once touted as Clinton's most influential advisor. According to Morris, the Democratic establishment knows, quote, that Biden can't run again in 2024. Okay, that makes sense. Due to his quickly declining mental abilities and the economic disaster he has presided over. Yeah, you could say that again. My gosh. All right, so we are right at a little over 30 minutes. We're going to take a break real quick. I'm going to play an ad for our sponsor for this segment, this show. Like I said, this one was brought to you by ShakeandWakeRadio.com. So, guys, if you have not checked that out yet, you need to. There is so much edifying content for you there, but I'll let this do the talking. So, here we go. So if you're like me, you're traveling a lot. Hey, Trey here with Course Correction Radio, and my question to you is, if you're traveling a lot, why are you not listening to the Shake and Wake Radio Network on ShakeandWakeRadio.com? On Shake and Wake Radio, you will find great shows such as Through the Black with Thomas Dunn, The Midnight Ride with John Pounders and David Carrico, The Cutting Edge Truth Radio Show, and so much more. You can even catch yours truly on Monday nights after the Jim Duke Perspective right there on ShakeandWakeRadio.com. All right, so I must warn you guys before we get into these next few stories. These are, I've already talked about stuff that'll probably get us, banned on YouTube, but depending on how this goes, there might be bits and pieces of this that are either like edited out, because, with 2 to 3 shows a week that sometimes go on YouTube, I do want, just out of like pure, not because I'm scared or anything, but just out of like, prudence, I want to avoid being placed on a strike if I can, but if that does happen, or, if you want to hear these full shows, if I do end up cutting out some pieces, you can find that over on metanoionmedia.substack.com for the main show, CCR Weekly. But you can find these shows at 333news.substack.com. You can find them in their entirety. So I just wanted to plug that if I could before we go. So this next story is...